Hello, Quinnipiac University. There were a number of people from other areas since I was a kid that sought me out, and there were connections between them to make confessions. One of them is a Rick Paglione, about a Leahy family and a Brian Silver, who's one of the ones involved also with FBI. He didn't bring up the FBI, but FBI and judges and prosecutors associated with the Brian Silver with all sides of criminal and civil cases, where they had crime roles at the crime scenes from there. Also with medical and fire campuses families. These are doctors, foreign and domestic, forging, switching names and sequences, and roles with use of /S of guilt roles, like the United States roles with the World Trade Center predicate acts, or Saudi attackers roles, because both of their identities are being and have been used remotely criminally foreign influence. And this is not debatable without self-value rules forbidding mandated law read proper. No, which is on a mass scale. It's one of the things that slavery was about, how and why it was left entrenched since before America's founders were born. They couldn't entrench it because of the method that was measuring and maintaining collusions with everyone against themselves. Otherwise, that body was sensed, including if it was a majority of people, including if it was everybody. This breaching method employed styles of economic logic and natures at countries A through Z, regardless if they're benefited by it or hurt by it and complaining about it, as styles simultaneously inventing practical reason, descriptions, and implications of its existence where it has been non-existent black pupils. So we're going to address it as a predicate acts with facts method /S, and the /S part as those plural parts. For example, first, discernible by ourselves even as Native Americans against the Native Americans, by the same breaching method that came from before modern religious messengers, where nature shows us it's more probable and more practical to convict, to theorize, let alone to convict. The sciences had already become, the sciences locations, they had already become criminally foreign influenced, tactically delusions wrought from off them. But then from on off them, hyper additional collusions, as we know today. Where and how we know today, on a mass scale. So people will jump in and pretend other. And I'll show you how they get away with it, because they've been stacking predicate acts and facts at every age and nature of campus. This is intra-campuses and inter. And then at the campuses themselves is intra and inter-campus manifest. This breaching method uses and has used confessions, where and how they are communicated for the breaching method, where and how it knows how to maintain other things, others, ourselves, blamed for things that it caused, like criminal foreign influences, that we're going to be able to discern using the hyper evidential too. We won't even need evidences. See, the breaching method recorded, confessed, and has the intelligence communities at countries A through Z recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed self-value roles with uses of things declassified by it that they pretend are declassified, and that's why they play roles forcing quality fact nature. That's criminal insidiousness, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. I'm not even a lawyer. I'm not a police form. Lawyers, all sides of criminal and civil cases, the courts at the same time, the intelligence tied to them at the same time. They have roles with the state of Connecticut corrections offices since before its inception and through it. They have roles with the state judicial branch offices through it since before its inception and through it, and with names next to it. Increasingly, who have been insidious little tricks into databases, pretended only because people are from the same town. Mass identity theft, fraud, slander, and fake motivations until there were real motivations. Native Americans against Native Americans, even. And then they became the first nature of America's founders. See, president / chief. And they were still fighting with each other. And then the grouped identity of our founders behind James Madison's plan. And then they went and got George Washington to agree to use that plan and to be the second identity of our founders as president / chief before there were presidents and / chiefs. We're talking about the founders now. And we're not using exceptions in exception nature, tactability from how nature uses it. We're using how nature defines our founders too, and how they define themselves. Someone could say, well, the president's technically a founder too. In other words, they're keeping us from understanding. The breaching method understood and understands more about our founders than we do, because it measures and maintains self-valued roles using what our founders said, leaving out what they declassified about it and about that breaching method, which was entrenched, that we could use, we could discern as a predicate acts with facts delivery system method. Now, see, we had and one that knew that it could get roles of predicate acts with facts methods, really sick natures of people, who are the only people allowed to or are capable of speaking for and about the law. Forgiveness is because you guys were child abused with the differences of the sciences, the religions, at location /S. There was a collusion that no one wanted. Since before and right through modern countries' foundings, no one discerned its method /S because everyone played economics, for example. Everyone played words like unabridged. Everyone uses knowledge of good and evil to get over. Oh, well, you don't even remember what amendment was what? Psh, what do you know? You're supposed to get the Constitution unabridged, and we have rights that are too numerous to list. You guys are still preventing. Anyone who tries to pretend that they can't discern how it is at least plausible that there could be whole distinct natures and methods of predicate acts with facts concentrated upon the people of New York, upon the people of all locations /S, but sickly distinct, because this breaching method also employed, it knew it's hurting everyone commonly, non-distinctly. It knew that nature would demonstrate that too. So it also consciously showed their identities of sophistication. They need to keep blamed on other things others are solved. Where and how no individual voice is allowed to appreciate such. Hyper-evidential, communicated by nature itself. The Constitution unabridged is a policy. It's the most important policy. In many ways tied to this breaching method that was left entrenched. And roles denying it are roles screening it, no. And roles with apparent motivations to do such are also roles screening it, no. It perfected that. In other words, so the news and the branches of government create faked evidences, like, in other words, pretending just because they can get in trouble, that's evidence enough. Because they have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and precedents. They're ongoing leaking that they do that. Weathersfield police have roles with other police departments and with F.B.I. and other agencies in forensics and interstate state police families, fabricating and changing other telephone conversations with the police and digital communications with them, because they had high progressions. They pretended through the news they had conversations with me as a kid that weren't at all. The kids that did go down and make police reports with them were kids. Chris Walters recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He was influenced to be in the car when I went to school. When he went to a private school, but he went to my public school with a car with my neighbor after he was already involved with relative federal evidences, crimes, wire crimes of multiple police departments, families, and retired police chiefs are involved. I didn't know at the time. And their intimate ties and their families and the difference of that. So this is the differences bracket where and how the confessions are made to the breaching method that measures and maintains how to maintain roles with itself. Needed, hit, like World Trade Center predicate acts, the motivations for it. World WFSB, Connecticut's Channel 3 News. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have with the intelligence families next to them in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. Through time, they have roles inter and intra campuses with names planting predicate acts with facts, fake conversations, fake ties, fake natures of ties to people. That's also identity theft, fraud, slander roles in scams. No, also as relative to them with even on Facebook recorded KKK themed, black themed, Confederate flag themed intelligence families colluding, Latino themed, Italian themed, Ukrainian themed, Russian themed at the same time, timed collusions. Hartford Hospital has roles with corners of streets on Griswold Street. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with a whole bunch of people from other areas tied to those names, also planting evidences and databases with them. And with people at my sixth grade class, fifth grade class, and fourth grade class, distinctly from people in my second and third grade class who were influenced to use information where they spied on me to use truth for lies and fake ties and fake natures of ties to me and to others that foreign and domestic have been pretending. There are a whole bunch of people with different names, males and females in their family. Multiple people with the name Brendan Leahy, I believe. I believe it's his father, one of the ones at Hartford Hospital associated with the son, a son. I know his father's involved anyway, even if his name is not Brendan Leahy, like his son. I believe his name is Brendan Leahy because of his father's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles by kids involved with predicate acts and planting evidences at corners of streets and buildings, and with wire crimes roles with people on my street that locked that in. A Ray Cololo and Tim O'Brien had conversations over the phone with other intelligence. I believe they're both intelligence. I know the O'Brien family is in intelligence, and they have conversations with other intelligence families foreign and domestic, and they try to make it look like they had conversations with me. Even next to the state capitol, they were influenced to pretend we had verbal communications by pretending and make it look like we're communicating a Chick Casper and a Mike Pandolf. It has something to do also with a Joe Aiello and their roles with Old Saybrook and Intercities, and where I believe it's Soundview associated with the Mazzucato family. They have rules with some foreign and domestic medical offenders of kids and people with state police families interstates, and FBI Director Robert Luskin and his co-defendants and their family members, putting fake ties, fake natures of ties, taking their picture, having someone taking their picture walking so they can make a fake exception and pretend people didn't realize that at the last second at courts, where they have all sides of criminal and civil cases, the courts at the same time, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the news planting the same sequence ships, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and KKK, black themed, Latino themed police with wire crimes, mail crimes. There! Get them on paper, one name is sequence. They also attach me to fake behavior of different natures. They're incapable of speaking for emotions, as they were shown. They lied about what they think about themselves and others, because they have roles of predicate acts with facts, methods. Forgiveness is because this is not to blame them; it's to focus on the acts. They need to have themselves. The breaching method needs to have themselves blamed or us blamed, with the people speaking for law, private, formal, and other. In other words, even the news at the same time, collusions on all natures of crime scenes. Increasingly, WFSB has roles with the fourth grade classes of a principal child defender's campus, with how they have the weather man go in there. This is also where how the breaching method employed the self-value defenses of the identity the sciences share. Self-value roles with them are bridged. And as the sciences of the law has failed to appreciate the value of the policy by the syntax of the Constitution, we are told to get unabridged. We are communicated to by nature itself too, not to blame its abridgments on criminal foreign influences that were and are maintained employments by the hyperforeign that was fluent through our nation's foundings. That's why and how slavery was still after our founders were born and through their lifetimes. They had to hide their roles with their names as the ones that forced the other founders to be the other founders, and then the presidents to be the presidents. George Washington agreed to help James Madison and the founders behind him. And we're supposed to be honest about the extortion of George Washington, which there are also proofs that he was also counter-extorted by James Madison and the founders behind him. But you guys have the nature of the debate. Slash asks regarding this and all things with criminally foreign influence, fact-driven nature, qualities, aspects, in nature itself, black pupils. There are millions behind me. And so they need the hundreds and thousands that formally speak for, oh, this person works for digital. They have foreign and domestic. We're speaking about jobs like with digital police. They get involved with subject treatments, incapable of defending that and before they discern what really the law says and why and how. You know, they have been using exception nature, tactical terror from how nature does and how a special difference does. So to discern it. So Russians in Ukraine, people from Ukraine, in American military, there are proofs that they have fire departments involved with the hospital and child campuses planting male crime, wire crime, fake ties to people, fake natures of ties to people. Also with judges speaking fake things in records. Judges increasingly, when I was a kid, now as an adult, increasingly rolls with an O'Brien and a Cololo family. O'Brien family doesn't even live on my street anymore. And that exception was exploited where they came on the street more than once after they left the house, after they left the street. Has something to do with their conversations using my name and people tied to me with the people at the top of the corner of the street on Fox Hill and Carriage Hill Drive. They had criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw conversations with them. These are intelligence families of and names involved with them, with all natures of involvements with them. And these are names at the World Trade Center attack, where the fact that they even believe that it could be debatable. You know, if someone says that they have means to discern the World Trade Center being and having been used remotely, criminally foreign influence. See, the natures of trade, self-valued relative to war, relative to, simultaneously to relativity itself, black pupils. Nature is all about the identity of relativity / hyperrelativity as the identity that projects why and how our species has quality aspects in nature like the other species' bodies distinctly, but also non-distinctly, and simultaneously, but also further hyper-simultaneously. Because our species didn't invent it, and the other species' bodies didn't invent how we have the same quality aspects in nature itself, even consciousness itself. To an extent shared, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, but again, further hyper-simultaneous. We have the value of money and the significance of it. You know, we're also relative to the relativity of that. You know, success, or in other words, why we need experts. See, they're using their knowledge of good and evil to pretend they could speak for practical reasons since they were kids. Roles with styles and natures of logic that were getting in the way of what actually was communicated by. Where actually the value of what was communicated by the little kid who lives on the 10th floor, say, of one of those people stacked buildings in New York City, what they said about it. What they should have said, how they should have worded it, how we should have, or how it should have been interpreted, is that the locations, areas, and states are criminally foreign influenced / hyper-criminally foreign influenced, which is important too because it needs increasingly locations, areas, and states everywhere the species body has a name as a person or as a country to blame other things, others, or selves for things that it caused originally and that it keeps still. It makes people, it needs to pretend that we're the ones that have to respect religious differences, even though the religious interpretations, formally and private, are recorded. They only could defend their acceptations and uses of their descriptions of the religious values. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, sequence shifting. The beginnings of the Old Testament and the Quran were written with parts that knew that were conscious that the people that would defend the religions and the people that counter them would stay in collusions with their differences, speaking about things like science and law or religion. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, / hyper criminally foreign influenced, / hyper criminally delusions raw. Because most of the delusions wouldn't be present, but per tactical degradation of the integrity of the location / S of the sciences. It's all of all locations / S, and then further databases, relationships, and then further those two collusions without only not wanted by anyone. Made exceptions for them. They don't want it even further, obviously, but then they made exceptions at the right where the sciences are located, knowing that there would be lie progressions for a whole bunch of different reasons at once, and styles of lie progression, styles pretending other that it could hide behind at all formal data and evidences reception location, because it has a complete hyperpossession over all location / S, because it caused things like slavery, because it already measured and maintained other things, others, or selves, blamed for the causes of slavery, like things like racism, a breaching method, even though you don't realize, if you believe that, that's the thing you should counter. Because obviously, nature itself shows us all that we should counter slavery. It shows us it's going to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and means for bad things to happen, and for means to be people perfect to get away with it from out of nowhere if we don't address it. That's really why and how war started. Leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. See, they're making subject treatments. They're reliant upon things being serious, more and more serious, so they can pretend, that's why they're ignoring people with passions and emotions dishonestly and stealing their identities roles. Fox Connecticut News is increasingly leaking that way with WFSB. In other words, they ever use wire and digital crimes. The courts and the police forms, they use these crime methods too, where they, as long as they keep things going before courts or before the police, that brings them before the courts. The difference between them individually grouped together, have predicate acts with facts, methods, together roles, collusions with all natures of crime scenes, with way worse than they put little kids and adults in jail for. And with way worse as the causes of it, collusions. The real causes of The real worst causes of the worst negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures in Hartford and in New York City, like shootings. There are also roles of people tied to the less often, but still there are murders and murder investigations in Wethersfield, even if they're made up, because the news makes things up too with them. They have a Julie Mancuso. I never had, and others with the name Mancuso. In the area, the locations tied to them has something to do with the Casper family and with the Cololo family and the DeMauro families and a Mark Violet with intelligence and Mike Violet. And they have intelligence families and a Casper family that was brought up by people at Hartford Hospital that have names that are doctors that Anthony Agman also brought up in confessions. They have roles with all kinds of Social Security scams. It might have been because he was trying to counter them and he knows about it. Hartford Hospital has doctors that have been planting evidences with the names next to the campuses through time. And they have roles selling drugs because they are unmarked police forms, but they're also pretending to kids to fake locations, fake uses of drugs and alcohol, and just fake conversations with themselves, whole fake transcripts, even to also simultaneously to hide things from the past and hide things they are shown they need to hide in the future by a breaching method, relative to where and to how they have uses of, like pretending they don't realize that some things are only classified because they have to do with how there are so many countries involved at the same time at Central Connecticut State University and with the names next to them as they are actually there. They're not legitimately with unmarked police forms and acting professors involved with the Gill family and their roles with Middletown and New Britain, state police families and police forms. There's a Gill family on Covington Street, and there are other neighbors of them that live on Covington Street who have roles with families from Wethersfield that used to live on my street, and ones with still their extended family still lives here. And some of them still live here as Wethersfield police, phones, families, and people tied to them. They have been putting fake transcripts in databases, fake ties and fake natures of ties to people at formal locations and acting tied to it because there's complete remote possession of the identities of the law. So the differences between Fox News treatments of subjects like wars, like people from Syria, leaders and kids, people from Afghanistan, leaders and kids. They are collusions with my neighbors next to Trinity College, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. People even on Facebook confirmed lost in the phones, confirmed Los Solitos with them, themed, and other people involved with body dumping spots, including the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso, and names reported, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed next to it, which you can't make that up. And it's a federal crime to make it up. But that's also, they confessed that there's a Kevin Dillon involved with that, and an Anna Dillon, and there's a Thomas Dillon, who are also further involved with sexual and medical offenders of little kids and their roles with elderly homes. There are many ways. There are many natures of organized crimes involved with the elderly homes and concentrated with the probate court judges and their roles where they have the people, elderly home, the elderly people, the patients they call them, locked in the elderly home. All exceptions, any weakness to make it worse than it is not. They're making things up. And they're hiding their delusions that are also relative and use/s of it by names that aren't even there. These are also people who had roles with the principal child offender, upskirt nature, and other natures of digital and sexual and medical crimes with the kids as the ones who worked at the relative elderly homes and the ones near the state corrections offices. No, the state corrections offices completely with increasingly has names tied to it. And just when they're driving by, when they say things, they have rules of identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, also in the form of federal evidences crimes through time connected, which is also hyper-evidential. Nature itself shows us the relativity of hyper-evidential as a real thing. Black pupils. All sides of criminal and civil cases, like with witch trials, even if it was made up, it's about the hyper-evidential. They were used effectively and are used effectively to measure and maintain. No one's speaking about how slavery was entrenched in really and why really it was still entrenched then. And the method, because then you would understand the science and method of slavery and you would discern it where and how it is real. It's still the suburbs were designed before America's founders were born by other and for other than is pretended for our founders when our founders communicated for us to tell on that, let alone the cities. The cities are only being and haven't been entertained the way they are. Relative to this, the difference between campuses A through Z, the best campus and the worst campus, that too, the breaching method measures and maintains self-value rules with its uses of that difference, where and how they speak. I'll whisper Creek, see president / chief, suspend all disbelief, vaccines. So in other words, Judge Napolitano is refusing. I can't get a response from him. I'm trying to ask him through YouTube videos because the police and courts use wire and mail crime methods where they just fabricate that to keep things going with cover up because they know people cover up for themselves. On a mass scale, they already use the right to lie, but they don't have the right to lie as an interpretation of the law. They already have, their family members involved. They have the different branches of government. There's no separation between them because there are collusions with each other. So, in other words, also a Mark Violet and a Rick Cianfaglio and also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Also a Mark Violet and Justin Klavinskis are involved with them with sequence shifts and planting federal evidences crimes with judges and prosecutors in foreign countries and people involved with the Wethersfield Police Department in my area and their educators who weren't even in my class in grammar school. Increasingly in my grammar school and people before that and the people tied to the campus, the houses next to them, businesses next to them, they have connected identity theft, fraud, slanders. Well, they'll tell you that they don't even know me. In other words, for the use of location, increasingly. So further, the Wethersfield Middle School has more people with whiting forensics and judges and prosecutors in the Britain Superior Court and Harper Courts, also the former director of the F.B.I., Robert Luskin, and interstate state police families with the same houses, timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises, plural, and private ones. At the same time with the news, too. So they prevent voices while they are increasingly collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases and all the law names at the same time, shown they need to hide that out of the locations relative to how anyone got away or could stay motivated to pretend it's even debatable that the suburbs are tactically denatured and going to cause nature to demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, let alone the cities. New York City, clearer than day. You know how many suburban kids try to use what we could discern when we're little kids? There's things that we don't want about that are building upon how we know we didn't want things about the Native Americans. But the formal identities of the law and educators can't afford to have that discerned, can't afford to have it spoken for accurately because they have differences, racket roles, self-value even as the victims of it. Inclusion and differences and equity. You know, there are whole predicate acts with facts roles on the people most hurt by the worst uses of location /s, by syntax and by the lack of it. You know, where it's fault, because that's where all our potentials come from. So you have to be that quality of fact should be nature capable of overcoming that hyper-criminally foreign influence, black pupils. We will not part it. We're not blaming other things. In other words, people that are obligated to not hide from and change what we say about how we can discern predicate acts with facts methods that all location/S just because we have black people's white survive and have had communicated for us by nature what the Constitution unabridged means, other than what the campuses pretend they mean, and their motivations for it. That's also hid behind by the breaching method that uses the identities of knowledge of good and evil to sense for itself who's using correlation right, even if it's a group of people, even if it's everyone, even if it's any grouping of people of countries that comes out of this to try to counter it. The real cause of negative value nature progressive acts and locations, areas, and states. If you're entertaining that, locations, areas, and states as is entertained, you can't entertain that and overcome. You can just make it worse. That's why we have wars and bombs. While we had means like that to say, okay, well, what if we put these kind of, in other words, we have suits until we have hunger employed by the breaching method. Anyone who denies that has to self-value criminally foreign influence readings of reality and of history. Nature employed us to hunger into long, clear water. In the ground, beautiful nature, tactically ulterior from these systems. Now, we were forced to entertain these systems, tactically ulterior from that. But the only time we're not supposed to be forced to not allow anyone to do anything but entertaining. But that never stopped being. So all discern, start seeing. And then next, we're going to bring up Mazzucato Bakery. Because through his silence, a police chief, Cintron, is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed through the people speaking for him as a little coward. He's got the Mazzucato Bakery and a Cololo family and others with the Iowa involved with that Elm Street corner of Elm Street and Route 3. Both Elm Streets, the one in Elm Street and Route 3 in Wethersfield and the one in Rocky Hill, have roles with people who have roles with predicate acts on my street through time with the Wethersfield police chief and with the campuses, with their educators. There are intelligence community people associated with Eric Oliveri, who's one of the ones on off the state judicial branch offices in its conjunctions like Route 3 and the Elm Streets, both Elm Streets, with my neighbors, with the name Cololo, who are also the ones who involved with everyone that have been there conversations with the intelligence communities in the area. This keeps the difference of them, the intelligence foreign, the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, the news locations. These are also the names at and next to the news locations, and the difference between them is have been used remotely, where they're pretending not to understand things and they have predicate acts collusions with the difference there. That's why they can't get on paper. There's a Domain family and a Mendez family involved next to Fox Connecticut News, involved with predicate acts with facts with Facebook and with the court's Facebook pages and with Judge Napolitano's social media. Now YouTube too. Fox Connecticut News has collusions with WFSB, attached me to fake conversations with themselves and others, with people that have been planting evidences at corners of streets and next to schools. Increasingly, a Ray Cololo, a Rick Cianpaglione, and a Timothy O'Brien have collusions with the corners of street, people that rolls with Russians and Ukrainian and the other countries, and people from Italy with foreign and domestic, with people from Pakistan, foreign and domestic, with psychiatry, and with badges ones, on and off and next to Hartford Hospital. A Mayano family, Ayala family, and a DeMauro family are families that sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm they planted evidences on my street, sequence chefs. All exception nature come with demonstrations of the same thing. And with people that with their educators from before that. That's why they can't get onto paper. They have a Michael Emmett is also by a proven principal child abuser, one of the ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by the roles with some untimely deaths at Trinity College, and drugs and medicines crimes, and digital crimes with child sex offenders, including with female judges, with the people that won't get on paper, with the KKK black theme too, Confederate flag theme right on the Facebook page of the Wethersfield schools. Michael Emmett has also the whiting forensics and judges and prosecutors speaking fake things and delusions into records with them. And they have Wethersfield town offices through time, involved with some probation officers, also with other towns, involved with some murders and untimely deaths that were also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, even on Facebook. That's why they took away my Facebook pages, and they lied about their motivations. A police chief, Cintron, has been lying about what he thinks about me, using all truths for lies, too. It has something to do. He's increasingly demonstrating, recorded, confirmed a whole bunch of people tied to him in his roles with Elm Streets and Wethersfield and Rocky Hill. Has roles with World Trade Center predicate acts, also with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants, and people with the name Scalora, that Wethersfield police and people switching names with people named Scalora. And one officer forced himself through the door of my house. Then he said not to mess with the Scaloras, to make it look like we had a conversation or communications that weren't. These are people planting digital evidences too. People tied to the names Demoro and Cololo said that's their cousins. Scalora, there was one of the Scaloras. There was a Claudia Scalora outside of the I had not a word of conversation with her. I knew she was planting evidence other ways for other different things. She has roles with the malls, like West Farmers Mall, the Buckland Hills Mall, and with the shopping centers, with people with the name Demaro and Cologne, people tied to them. They said the name Doobie, Rich Doobie, and these are police forms families. They have ones with the name D. Simone. These are people next to Hartford Hospital which is also next to Buckley and other little schools there. No, they have medical offenders of kids' roles and cover-ups with them. With IL, there's people with the name Aiello. There's an Aiello's Kitchen there, Buckley School, and the spots next to next to the and where the Hartford Hospital, right next to it was Demoro's Market. A whole bunch of people tied to the Demoro family has roles with intelligence agencies, foreign and domestic, where they have sexual and medical offenders, doctors putting fake transcripts and databases with judges and prosecutors personally with their family members, and with overt criminal enterprises. That's why really they don't even know themselves. Why really they have the Los Solitos video about Hartford, Connecticut, and they show the spots near. They focus on the spots right next to Hartford Hospital. Hartford Hospital was founded the Institute of Living as the mental health care side of Hartford Hospital. It was founded on the campus of Hartford Hospital in 1822, with slavery still entrenched. And our founders communicated for us to understand this about Hartford Hospital and about their roles with hospitals throughout the country, putting fake transcripts and databases with various natures of courts and family members with them personally and professionally, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, and their patients and criminals and family members of campuses and of telephone lines. They run into high line progressions and make fake conversations with other people. That's how they get away with pretending all kinds of things, pretending they have integrity. That's also evidence. That's also a question we have to ask ourselves. How could they have pretended to get away with integrity so long back, pupils? How could they have such serious threats with nuclear weapons and now hypersonic missiles and things like that, but they have no solution? And how can they, while they're pretending they can't imagine or how to understand someone when they say that New York City is not free? Then they have to compare to the other countries heard sickly distinctly. Then they have to defend that. Can't defend that and afford to be, let alone to protract. Short words with theory, let alone convictions proper, by the value of Unabridged, by the value of James Madison and of his communications, let alone of Marbury versus Madison, too. Whoa! Follow mandated law for your leaders. Let me show you. Have forgiveness.